J.P. Morgan had it all: wealth, power, and influence. He ran the first billion-dollar company, controlled the country's top industries, and sometimes the U.S. economy relied on his actions. His word could stop a company from collapsing or save it from bankruptcy. Some admired him, while others feared him. There will never be another J.P. Morgan. This is his story. A man always has two reasons for doing anything: a good reason and the real reason. J.P. Morgan, a fragile start. Through personal tragedy and bold risks, Morgan transformed from a frail boy into one of the most powerful financiers in American history. This is the story of how a fragile start paved the way for a titan of industry. John Pierpont Morgan was born in Connecticut in 1837 into wealth and privilege. His father, Junius Spencer Morgan, was already a successful banker. Junius made sure John had the best education, hoping John would become a banker too. But John's childhood wasn't easy. He was often sick with bad coughs, headaches, seizures, and diseases like scarlet fever. His health kept him from playing outside, so John spent his time indoors studying finance. When he got rheumatic fever, his father sent him to the Azores Islands to recover in the ocean air. John stayed there alone for a year. When he finally recovered, he continued his education. By 1857, after studying in Boston, Switzerland, and Germany, he was ready to start working. He began his career on Wall Street, thanks to his father's connections. His father thought John was too cautious to be a successful banker. In 1859, while in New Orleans, John took a risky gamble by buying a shipment of Brazilian coffee that no one wanted. The deal worked out. But the older bankers, including John's father, didn't like the risk. So at 24, John left the safety of his father's firm and started his own company. Soon after, John got married, but his wife fell ill with tuberculosis and died just 4 months after their wedding. John was devastated. While John dealt with his tragedy, the U.S. was in the midst of the Civil War. In 1863, conscription laws required men to fight, but John paid $300 to avoid serving and hired a substitute. However, John still got involved in the war by making money. Is when he bought old rifles from the government for $3.50 each, made some minor fixes, and sold them back to the government for $22 each, making a huge profit. War profiteering made him unpopular, but his business dealings continued to grow. The railroad magnate. In 1871, John partnered with Anthony Drexel to start Drexel Morgan & Company, which would later become J.P. Morgan & Company. John connected investors with visionaries, making money in the process, seeing the industry as a huge opportunity. Unlike steel or oil, where one person dominated, he began merging railroads, creating large, powerful companies that could set their prices without competition. His approach to merging companies became known as Morganization. John also got personally involved in managing the companies, making sure they ran how he wanted. Soon he owned 1/3 of all railroads in the U.S. and reshaped the industry. His power grew along with his wealth. John wasn't just a financier, he had an intimidating presence. By 1901, however, John met his match with President Theodore Roosevelt. When John created a huge railroad holding company, Roosevelt sued, using the Sherman Antitrust Act to break it up, with John once wishing a lion would kill Roosevelt on a trip to Africa. But this setback didn't stop John. He was already moving on to bigger things. Man of Steel. J.P. Morgan didn't just control railroads. He reshaped the American steel industry with a single staggering deal, paying $480 million to create the world's first billion-dollar company. But this wasn't just about business. Morgan's move would forever change the landscape of American industry. Discover how one man took a gamble and became the undisputed king of steel. In 1901, Andrew Carnegie wanted to retire and sell his steel company, which dominated the industry. John told him to name his price: $480 million. John agreed without hesitation, even though he would have paid more. He then merged Carnegie Steel with other companies to create U.S. Steel, the world's first billion-dollar company. This deal gave John control over 2/3 of America's steel production. John had a strong hold on both steel and railroads. He even helped finance Thomas Edison's experiments with electricity, and he was key in creating General Electric and AT&T. John's ability to merge companies into giants was unmatched. But another crisis was looming. Crisis. What happened when America was in crisis? J.P. Morgan is the man who saved America. Twice. When the U.S. economy teetered on the brink of disaster not once, but twice, J.P. Morgan. As banks crumbled, panic spread, and the government faced collapse, Morgan's financial genius and bold actions, but was he a hero? Or did he simply use the crises to tighten his grip on power? Here's how J.P. Morgan became the man who could make or break America. In 1893, the U.S. faced an economic depression unlike anything before. Stocks plummeted, Businesses closed and unemployment soared. Foreign investors pulled their money out of the U.S., draining the country's gold reserves. The U.S. was still on the gold standard, meaning dollars could be exchanged for gold. The government's reserves were shrinking fast. By 1895, only $9 million in gold was left, and the government was close to defaulting on its loans. President Cleveland turned to J.P. Morgan for help. John came up with a plan to save the economy by forming a group of bankers who would buy $65 million in bonds with gold. The deal was made quickly, and within minutes, John and his partners bought all the bonds, restoring confidence in the economy. John had saved the U.S. from disaster. However, many questioned whether he acted out of patriotism or for his financial gain. In 1907, another financial crisis hit. Banks were on the brink of collapse, and people rushed to withdraw their money. Once again, the government turned to John. He brought together the nation's top bankers and worked out a plan to save the financial system. John was 70 years old and sick with a cold, but his efforts stabilized the economy. However, people began to worry about the power one man held over the entire country. Legacy. As the age of robber barons ended, John faced increasing scrutiny. The public was growing tired of a few wealthy men holding so much power. John was called to testify before the Pujo Committee, which investigated the influence of Wall Street. His mental health was deteriorating, and he suffered nervous breakdowns. He was supposed to sail on the Titanic's maiden voyage, but canceled due to health problems. The Pujo Committee's investigation led to the creation of the Federal Reserve, ensuring that no single person could control the economy. John died on March 31, 1913, at 75. His son took over the business, and J.P. Morgan & Company continued to grow. Today, J.P. Morgan Chase is the largest bank in the world by market capitalization, with $3 trillion in assets. John Pierpont Morgan's legacy lives on, though opinions remain divided on his impact on America. Many disagreed with Morgan, even though he was powerful and influential. As a result of his monopoly over some businesses, he was given the epithet, the Napoleon of Wall Street. Many people viewed him as a representation of the excesses that were prevalent throughout the Gilded Age. Others, on the other hand, regarded him as an indispensable force for maintaining order and stability in an economy that was undergoing tremendous transformation. J.P. Morgan Chase & Company, the corporation that bears his name, ensures that J.P. Morgan's legacy continues to be carried on today. Even though it is one of the largest banks in the world, the corporation continues to have a significant impact on the financial landscape of the entire world. But the legacy of Morgan extends far beyond the confines of his organization. His ideas and philosophies continue to have an impact on the fields of banking and economics, even today. In conclusion, J.P. Morgan was a man of great wealth and influence who helped shape the U.S. economy in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. His financial ideas and actions continue to shape the modern financial world. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below to let us know your thoughts on the incredible journey of J.P. Morgan.